Hello everyone, it's Rick Quattro from Carmen Publishing Incorporated. We're going to talk a little bit more about auto numbers here and give you some suggestions and some methods for making understanding the complex auto numbering a little bit easier and a little bit easier to set up. So we have an example here and we're going to use volumes, chapters, sections, tables, figures, and equations. So we have numbering that's dependent on each other. We've got these 6 paragraph formats where it's dependent on each other. Now, normally with volumes, chapters, sections, you could use the built-in vol num and chap num building blocks. But in this case, we want to use just normal everyday building blocks because we're just basically using this as an example, something that you can see in a single file what's happening. Now, what we've done is we've created these paragraph formats ahead of time and added a little bit of formatting to them. So if you keep your eye on the paragraph catalog, you can see I've got one called volume, another one called chapter, one called section, and then we have table title, figure title, and equation title. And basically the way this is going to work is every time we have a new volume, we want to reset the chapter number. And so if you look down here, we have volume 2, and we're going to reset these chapters. These chapters are going to start again at number 1. Every time we have a new chapter, we're going to restart the sections at number 1. So you can kind of see how the numbering hierarchy is set up. What we've done to illustrate this is we have hard-coded numbers in here that we've highlighted in yellow just so you can kind of see what we're shooting for. Now let's look and see how we can use a table to kind of make this a little bit easier to set up. The nice thing about using a table like this is we can kind of visualize how these counters and these building blocks have to be set up for each paragraph format. When we're just working in the paragraph designer, we can go over here and put in our what we think our auto number should be, but we're only seeing that one. And it's a little bit difficult sometimes to visualize what we need when we're looking at these one at a time. So what the table allows us to do is kind of see these all at once so we can kind of figure out what we're going to get. So let's start by filling in the table. And what we want to do is start at the top and we're going to fill in the paragraph format name. And we're going to start at the most important format, which is the volume format. In other words, what's the highest in the series? What's the highest in the hierarchy? And that would be volume. So we'll just type in volume here. And then the next one down would be chapter and section. And then we have a table title, we have figure title, and then we have equation title. So these are the paragraph format names. The names are case sensitive, so we need to get them right. We need to match exactly how we have them defined, and we'll see why later on why this is important. Now we mentioned before that each set of paragraphs that number together that are related to each other in the series have to have their own series label. And that can be any uppercase letter or lowercase letter followed by a colon. And since it has to be the same, we can just copy and paste this down. Now in our auto numbers, we may have text prefixes. We may have hard-coded text in here. And indeed we do if we look at our examples. This one is just going to say volume, chapter, section, and so on. And in fact, we can just kind of cheat here. We can copy and we can paste these in. And the only thing we have to do is just remove the word title here in each one of these because the prefix is just going to say table, figure, or equation. And there's one other thing we'd want to do here is when we create these, we're going to want some kind of a space character at the end. So we're just going to use control space. That'll give us a non-breaking space at the end here of each one. So we'll just quickly add these. So now we have this kind of roughed out. This is kind of what we're going to want for our initial setup. But now we got to start thinking about counters and how we're going to number these paragraphs. How are we going to increment these paragraphs? And the best way to visualize this is in a table. And the reason is because we can take each body row of the table and that will correspond to one of the counter rows. So the first body row, the first format row, will correspond with the first counter column. And the second one will correspond with the second counter column, and so on. And you can see this with kind of the diagonal where these two come together, the cell where these two merge is where the actual counting takes place. So that's why we've added this black border on here, just kind of as a visual. So this is for our chapters. This is what's going to number our sections, our tables, our figures, and our equation. So this helps us kind of visualize how many counters we need, how many building blocks we need. If we were to add another row, then we would need to add another counter column. We'd have to add a seventh column. Now, one thing you can do if you want to make it easier, instead of saying counter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you could actually type in these names. So you could say, you know, volume, chapter, section. This will help you kind of, you know, keep track of which column is what here. Table title, figure title, equation title. Now these don't have any effect on what we're doing as far as, you know, functionality, but they may help us to kind of line things up in our mind. Now, what are we going to do for each one of these counters? Let's look at the first, let's look at what we count first. Well, here obviously we count the volume. And what are we displaying for the volume? We're displaying uppercase Roman numerals. So we're going to want to change this to an uppercase R. So this will give us, every time we get a new volume, we're going to get a new Roman numeral. Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now the rest of these are going to be numbers. We have chapter number, so it's N plus. We've got sections numbered N plus, tables N plus, figures, and equations. So those are okay. The N pluses are fine. Now, how do these relate to each other? Well, let's talk about resetting to 0 first. So remember what we said? We said every time we get a new volume, we want the chapters to restart at 1. So the way we do that is we go up to the chapter column here and we say space equals 0. And so what we're saying is every time there's a new volume, we want to reset the chapter number to 0 so that the first chapter we put in, the N plus will kick in and it'll make it a number 1. And in fact, we can do that with all of these here. We can say, you know what, whenever we have a new volume, we want to reset everything below. Whenever we have a new chapter, we want to reset everything below. Whenever we have a new section, we want to reset the tables, the figures, and the equations. So we're just going to copy that and we're going to paste. And we're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to do the same thing here. Now, when we get here, it changes a little bit because don't forget, tables, figures, and equations, they number independently of each other. So if you have 3 tables, for example, table 1, table 2, table 3, and then your first figure, well, you want that to be figure 1. And if figure 1 is followed by another table, you want that to be table 4, and so on. So you want these to number independently of each other. You don't want the tables to affect the figure numbering, the figures to affect the equation numbering, and so on. So we're going to leave these blank. We're going to say, just leave these alone. Just don't reset anything. Just put the placeholders in here. So these are going to end up being the way they are. Now that we have the reset counters figured out, what are we going to do as far as what we display? What are we going to display to the user? Well, we know in the volume, all we're displaying is the volume number. And same thing with the chapter number. All we do is display chapter 1. Now, when we get to the sections, now we're going to display 2 numbers. The rightmost number is going to be the current section number, and that's going to increment 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're also going to display the chapter number. So whatever chapter we happen to be in, we're going to display it. We're not going to change it. We're not going to increment it. We're not going to set it to 0. We're just going to display it. And so what we need to do here, we look for the chapter column, and we're just going to bring down the current chapter number, and that's just going to be N. All right, sorry, that should be lowercase n. And then what goes between them? Well, we have a period between them, a dot between them. So we're going to put the literal dot in here. So again, if we visualize this, it'll be section space, whatever the chapter number is, dot, whatever the current section is. And then we just want these placeholders to reset the tables, the figures, and the equations to 0 below them. Because for each section, we're going to start new table numbering. We're going to start new figure numbering, new equation numbering. All right, so what are we doing for tables? Well, tables are similar. We're going to display the chapter, dot section, and then of course the current table number. So we can actually take this and copy it, and we'll paste it. In fact, let's look ahead a little bit. The figures and equations are going to be exactly the same. We're always going to display the chapter number. Now we're going to also display the current section number. And so we're going to bring down the section number for each table. So it's going to be table chapter dot section dash whatever the table number is. And we can just put a dash in here. And let's see, are we doing the same thing? Yes, we're doing the same thing for figures and equations. So let's copy this. And let's paste that. Now when we get here, this column here deals with the table title. So for figures, we don't care. We're just going to pass the current table title through. We're not going to alter it. We're not going to reset it. We're not going to display it. Same thing here. When we're displaying an equation, we're going to pass the current table title through. We're going to pass the current figure title through, but we're not going to display it. So we're going to leave these blank building blocks in here. So that's pretty much it. And you can see how much easier it makes to visualize all these formats at once and how they relate to each other. Now we have to figure out how to get these into the paragraph designer. Let's try to figure out an easy way to get them in here. So let's save this, and then let's make a copy of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to make let's make a copy here first. Let's leave it in FrameMaker. And then what we'll do here is let's get rid of the heading column because we don't need this. And let's get rid of this column. And let's take this document and let's save this as a text file. So we're going to say save as, and we're going to say text only. And what are we going to do here? Okay, so what we're going to do is what we're concerned about is the text from the table. So we're going to write out this table text, and we're not going to put anything between each cell. So we're going to delete this, but we're going to put a return between each row. And let's see what we get. So we save that, and we'll open it back up in FrameMaker. We could open this up in a text file, but we'll just open it in FrameMaker. Okay, so notice what we get now. We get our building blocks. We get our auto number string. So now all we have to do is let's go ahead and tile this. Now all we have to do is click in. Let's move this. Let's copy this. In fact, we can triple click on it, just copy the whole paragraph. And then we'll go over to our other document. We'll click in here and paste. And we have to put the trailing non-breaking space in, and we'll click update all. And there we have it. We have what we want as far as the volume number. We can go back over here. We can copy the chapter. So this kind of gives us an easy way to take this work we did in the table and actually transfer it to our paragraph, our template. Update all, and so on. So we can continue to do this. Now I want to show you an easier way. This, as I did this, I realized, well, this is a great opportunity to have a script. So let's close this, throw this away, and let's throw this away, and let's open our original document, and I'll show you how we can actually make this even easier. So once we have our table set up, what we can do is we can click in the table and we can run this script that I wrote, and it's called Auto Number Builder, and we can say build auto numbers from table. And what it'll do is it'll go through that table, it'll read those paragraph formats, and for each paragraph format it'll copy those auto numbers out and put them into the format. So we can have pretty much instant results here. And you can see what happened here. We have, there's our volume, there's our chapter, there's our section, there's our table. All the auto numbers are filled in. Now, one thing I think I forgot to do was put in the trailing non-breaking space here. So now all is not lost. We can just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do control space, control space, control space. So we'll put these in here at the end. And one more right here. And so now we have the non-breaking space at the end of the auto number. And I'm just going to click in the table again and rerun the script. So I'm going to do utilities, build auto numbers from table, and there I've got my non-breaking space between the last counter and the actual text. So there you go. That's a good way to do it. Again, even if you don't use the script, the fact that you set it up ahead of time in a table, I think makes the whole concept of numbers and series and how these building blocks have to line up, it makes it a lot easier to do it in a table. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them on the blog. And as always, thank you for watching.